From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Starting with a quick update here. A couple of weeks ago we talked about Sweden and that the left-wingers over there in their parliamentary system voted along with the right-wingers in a vote of no confidence for Prime Minister Stefan Löfven. And they were taking a big chance because that might have swung power over to the right, but they were standing especially for one particular issue, and that was that the centrists of Sweden, the Center Social Democratic Party, was flirting with the idea and actually about to pull it off, making Sweden's rental system market-based rather than the rent-controlled system they've had. And so this was the hill the left decided to live or die on. They took a chance, and our update is that they won that fight. So for the time being, the status quo remains. They will not be making that change in Sweden to a market-based rental system. So a great victory there, and Stefan Löfven has been now voted back into office. So there you go. And we talked about this, not because I'm any big expert on Sweden, which I definitely am not, but if you recall, we talked about the parallel that I saw here between this and what's happening in the U.S., where the left wing of the Democratic Party, and I can actually say that because there actually is a left wing of the Democratic Party now. For years and years and years, Bernie Sanders pretty much stood all by himself. But now we have a fledgling left wing in this country. They're still relatively centrist compared to the rest of the world, but still, you got to be kind of happy with the likes of AOC and the Squad and Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. Now we've got a socialist mayor in Buffalo. We got Nina Turner running for Congress in Ohio. And we've got a growing left if we can embrace it. And if those on this growing left can show the chutzpah that the Swedish left showed, stand up for these issues. They took a chance. They voted no confidence to this prime minister flirting with centrism at the risk of handing power to the right. Hey, you got to take a risk. Now look at our situation here, especially with the two biggest things pending in Congress right now. That would be the two bills for infrastructure, and then, of course, the two bills for voting rights. So here's where the left, I believe, should follow suit, and some of them are threatening to not vote for the so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill, with only $600 billion in new spending and very dangerous ideas on where that money is going to come from. Specifically, I'm thinking right now about all of these so-called public-private partnerships. There are people making noises about selling public lands, handing management over to private industry. Yeah, we just really, really can't have that. Now, that's all in negotiations as we speak, especially the whole funding part of this of that bipartisan bill. So lefties, Bernie has said he's not going to vote for it if it comes down to that kind of funding. So lefties, make a stand. Follow the model of the Swedes. Take a chance. Vote on principle. You can't just be compromising all the time. That's the one step forward, two steps back thing, and then the drift keeps happening. And also, it just hands victories to the right-wingers who have no intention of negotiating in good faith. The right-wingers, they come right out and say it out loud. There was another story I saw it just yesterday. I forget who it was, a member of Congress caught on a live mic in a private meeting. You know, one of these videos that leaks, saying, no, we have no intention of cooperating in any way, shape, or form. We want chaos. We want gridlock. We want nothing to happen. We're not going to give the Biden administration and congressional Democrats one damn inch. They say it behind closed doors, and then and they say it right out loud. Mitch McConnell just said a couple of weeks ago. No, the era of bipartisanship, if there ever was one, if there was a chance, that's all gone. So, okay, good for the Swedes. There's our update there. Hey, did you hear that the Orange Menace is suing Twitter and Google? At least he's going to try to. He's been in and out of courtrooms his entire life. He brings these ridiculous suits. He loses pretty much all the time. So this is just kind of a big joke. I need to mention it for just a couple quick reasons. Number one, it's just another of his little scams for fundraising, because he's going to fundraise on this. So there's that. And number two, I think it's worth reminding us all here. He's accusing these social media platforms of censorship, that they censor conservatives. So we just have to make it very clear. That is absolutely not true. No objective study of this has ever shown that to be true. If these platforms do somehow seem to kind of lean to the left or lean liberal, well, that's just strictly because of the old canard. Reality leans liberal. And if and when they do, of course, as Twitter and Facebook have both done, if they do ban somebody like the Orange Menace, or recently they banned Senator Ron Johnson for a while, or they put warnings next to it, it's not because they're conservatives, it's because they're lying. It's because they're spreading not only lies, but dangerous lies. So social media platforms do not favor liberals versus conservatives. Again, if they do, it's only because it's based in reality. And when they do take action, it's because of dangerous lying. Okay, you just can't do that. And you can't be condoning or promoting violence. There are rules. Now, number two here, or I forget, number three, wherever I am. Next point. Even, you just toss everything I just said. Even if they were censoring conservative voices, they're private companies. They can do whatever the hell they want. They can stand right up and say, yes, we censor conservative voices. We don't like you, and we don't want you, and we're going to just toss you off our platform for whatever reason we choose, or for no reason. They're private companies. They can do it. They can do what they want. This is not an area of public accommodations. A lunch counter can't toss out anybody they want because, there are protected classes of people. Race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, these are in law, public accommodations. You can't refuse service. This doesn't fall under that. The social media platforms can do whatever the hell they want. So I just thought this required a little reminder. First, that it's just another one of his grifts. He's just going to raise money on all of this. It's not a serious lawsuit. It's going to be tossed out immediately. It's not going to get anywhere. Secondly, the big social platforms do not censor conservatives. And number three, even if they did, it's fine. Go ahead. Speaking of platforms here, you've heard of Gettr? Gettr. Like Get Her Done? That's the new social platform. Facebook-ish, Twitter-ish. I haven't signed in yet. I thought I would, because they're billing themselves as a free speech and very much welcoming of conservatives. It's funny how they say both at the same time. Their big selling pitch is that they're not going to censor anybody. Complete free speech. This is what the right-wingers keep yelling. And yet in the same breath, they say, oh, we're going to highlight conservative voices and we love the Orange Menace and all that stuff. So I went to the site and they wanted a bunch of information from me in order to sign up. And I decided not to, because I don't know if you've seen in the news, they're just a hacker's delight. They've been getting hacked and infiltrated by all sorts of ne'er-do-wells, which is kind of funny. But it's a pretty big problem, I guess, for this site. So I don't think I'll expose myself to that. My intention was to go ahead and join so I could read what they had to say, and so I could toss in my little barbs and generally be a thorn in their side. Post this podcast on their site and just make everybody mad. So that was my thought, but I've decided, at least for the time being, not to do that. Not with all the shenanigans going on over there. I don't want to be swept up in all of the hacks, etc. But while I was there, something I was able to look at were their terms of use. And talking about complete unfettered free speech, that's their big selling point. Listen to number 4 on their list of terms of use. We reserve the right, in our sole discretion, to remove your profile and or deny, restrict, suspend, or terminate your access to all or any part of the interactive community for any reason. So, I don't know. That's unfettered free speech. The other big site was, what was it called? It was the Mike Lindell Pillow Guy site. Oh, Frank Speech. There's another one. All sorts of promises for this unfettered free speech platform. You could say whatever you want, but totally right-wing. And I did sign up for Frank Speech when it first came out for the same reasons. I wanted to be able to get inside and read what these people are saying and make my comments and post my podcast and be a thorn in their side. And all I had to give them was a phone number. Okay, I'll take a chance on that. But ever since then, and it's been quite a while, it's been, I don't know, at least a couple of months, I can't get into the site for the life of me. I don't know what's going on over there. They're having all sorts of troubles. It never did really launch like it was supposed to. It fell on its face. And I'm not sure they ever did really completely launch because I can't get in. I'll get text messages from them every once in a while with a link to read this wonderful article by such and such, some news item that they're sending out via text. So I click on the link. It takes me to the front page of Frank's Speech, and that's as far as I get. They won't let me in. So I guess maybe it's either A, not working, or B, they know who I am and don't want me in there. So, well, there's the current status of Gettr and Frank Speech, both currently, at least for me, inaccessible. Maybe you'll have better luck. Speaking of unsavory people, another in a theme here of kind of a standard warning or reminders. As a thinking person with cognitive abilities, please don't let yourself get fooled by the illegitimate Republican Party, the American fascists. Their love of propaganda is unmatched in history. And sometimes they're very good at it. And that's why I feel compelled to issue some warnings occasionally. Here's an example. Headline from Fox News. California homeowner shoots, kills suspected intruder. A suspected home intruder has died after initiating a shootout with a rural California homeowner, according to the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Office. The deceased, 41-year-old Rodney Lee Martin, was found inside the home with a stolen firearm on his person, authorities said. So, this is what they do. They don't have to invent stories, although they're not above that either. But this is one of their favorite little tactics. They find one anecdotal story, one incident like this, and without coming right out and saying it out loud, the implication is clear. A bad guy was shot by a good guy with a gun. And this is why everybody has to have guns, and this is why you can't have anything that even smells like gun control. And there are bad people out there, and they deserve to die. And what they don't mention is that for every one case like this where a quote-unquote good guy shoots a bad guy, there are going to be 100 or 1,000, I don't know how many, gun incidents that go wrong. It's the bad guy shooting the good guy. It's a kid finding a gun. It's a gun that goes off while somebody's cleaning it. It's a stolen gun where the so-called bad guy steals the so-called good guy's gun and then uses it on him. So for every story like this, there's 1,000 stories that would argue the opposite point. Guns are just damn dangerous. And the fewer guns we have, the better off we're all going to be. So this is what they do. They take an anecdotal story and then they universalize it, either implicitly or explicitly. Here's another example. Again, Fox News. Los Angeles spa protest turns violent after alleged transgender exposure incident. Now, if you're privy to Fox News, which I am because, I need to know what they're doing sometimes. This was a story they just ran with. Apparently, a transgender woman was using a public, like a gym or something. And she was just getting dressed like people do at a gym in a locker room. And I guess momentarily exposed herself. So I don't know, maybe she was a little careless, maybe she was a little indiscreet, maybe she was even a creep. I'm not sure of the actual story, but for our purposes, it doesn't really matter whether it was just an innocent little accident or she was really being a creep. I don't know which is true. I'm assuming the best. I'm assuming it was incidental. But even at its worst, it's one case. And they report it with this big fat headline, and they talk about it on all the nighttime opinion shows. Tucker Carlson gets his shot at it, and Sean Hannity gets his shot at it, and Ingram gets her shot at it. And people get riled up. Now there are protests. Videos from Fox Los Angeles and others shared to social media showed that people from both sides of the transgender rights movement clashed at the scene. One isolated story, which is in no way indicative of the transgender community, as far as locker rooms, spas, gyms, bathrooms, any sort of danger is completely invented by the Republican fascist U.S. party. But they find one incident, and then they use that to make us think, oh, it's a big problem. They've been doing this for years. It's their favorite tact with immigrants. Oh my God, you find one illegal immigrant who breaks the law, all of a sudden all immigrants are somehow lawbreakers. It's really despicable. It's the very definition of bigotry. And not only bigotry for its own sake, but bigotry with an agenda. Because when you get right down to it, and we're complaining constantly about the right-wing Republican Fascist Party of America, and there are lots of things to complain about, but really it does just boil down to that one single thing. They just do not want a multiracial democracy in this country, and they're not going to have it. On their watch, they're not having it. Every specific case, every specific story you can talk about, every angle of this problem with the American Fascist Party, it all comes down to that one single, very easy to understand point. They're white, they're Christian, they dominate, and they have for years and decades, and that's the way they like it, and damn it, that's the way it's going to stay. And whatever they have to do, if they have to vilify people of color, if they have to destroy electoral democracy, none of it matters as much as maintaining the patriarchal white supremacy. That's what it's all about. Lately, it's been all about violence. It's been all about standing up for the cops and pointing out these crime statistics that are rising. And here again, it's the kind of coordinated propaganda, lies, that would make Goebbels just stand up and cheer. I mean, here's something else that you really, as a lefty, you need to understand this and don't fall for it. We mentioned just briefly the other day about the election of the mayor in New York. By the way, they seem to have a winner now. It looks like Eric Adams is the winner. He's the projected winner now. And I bring this up because he's a former cop, I guess, and a lot of the attention, maybe the number one issue in the mayoral race, was the rise in violent crime. Well, here's a case of right-wing Goebbels-type propaganda infiltrating mainstream media and even infiltrating left-wing politics. People on the left. Well, I always have to qualify that. There is no left. I'm the left and half a dozen of my buddies. Democrats are centrists. Anyway, the point remains the same. Right-wing propaganda, lies, infiltrate mainstream Democrats. Let's be clear. There are no soaring crime rates. It's a lie. Crime is generally steady. In fact, it continues to decline as it has been for decades, since the mid-90s. The uptick in homicides and in violent crime is almost entirely related to guns. So if we want to look for solutions, let's talk about that. I mean, there's a pretty nice little parallel there. Rising gun ownership and rising gun crimes go hand in hand in hand. And that uptick has been happening since 2016. Crime rates, violent crime rates that is, and specifically gun crimes, on the rise all through the Orange Menace administration, with a particular jump, a pretty steep climb, between 2019 and 2020. And now so far in 2021, that's generally holding kind of steady. So, very simple to look at these basic charts. Look at the graph line. Who was president in 2019 to 2020 and through all of 2020? Anybody know? You want to take a wild guess? And yet, the Republicans get on the TV, and what they've completely invented, I mean, totally just pulled it right out of their behinds, is that somehow Joe Biden and leftist, socialist, radical Democrats with their defunding of the police are to blame for these crime rates, these gun crimes, gun deaths. No, guns aren't to blame. Skyrocketing gun ownership, just numbers of guns on the streets, that's not to blame. No, let's blame a few fiery speeches from a few fiery protests about how no good cops need to be defunded. That somehow creates a rise in crime? A couple of speeches? Nobody's actually defunded any police anywhere. And the very idea that cops should be defunded, it's not the Democratic Party in general. It's certainly not Joe Biden by a long mile. And when you ask people who really know about this stuff, sorry, but there are people who get up every day, they put on their socks and their shoes and they go to their job to research this, and they do it for 8 hours and then they come home and have dinner. And they get up and do it the next day. They spend 40 hours a week researching why. Do you spend 40 hours a week researching why gun deaths are going up? Do you know better than these people? I don't claim to know better than them. But I'll tell you what they say. And they all say to a person, we don't really know. You can't figure this stuff out right as it's happening. You need several years to sort of look back and really understand what happened. So anybody who says they know why gun deaths are up is lying to you. The only thing the experts do say is what I've already said. Numbers of guns will increase numbers of gun incidents and deaths. That much we know for sure. All the rest is speculation, educated guesses. COVID, of course, just threw everything to the wind for a year or more. And we know for a fact that low-income folks, people of color, generally those who were already at a disadvantage on a number of socioeconomic scales, were hurt the most by COVID. And not just by the disease, but all of the social inequities were magnified by COVID and the general experience that we've had in the pandemic. So if that's the case, you would expect then, okay, violence, gun violence especially, probably going to go up. We know that domestic violence has been a problem because of quarantine issues and all of that. So there's some pretty good speculation. There's mostly from the experts saying, you know what, give us a couple of years. That's how long it takes to understand these kinds of trends. You can't explain them as they're happening. That's not the way science works. But there's pretty good speculation on a couple of points, and there's the one lock-solid agreement. More guns, more gun death. But the American Fascist Party makes up their lies and just fantastically, nonsensically blames Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. And then they try to score political points, and it's all about taking back Congress in the 22 midterms. Now, I don't know how much success I can have warning people who are already conservatives, predetermined to believe these lies. But damn it, if you're a centrist or a leftist and you're believing any bit of this, please check yourself. Don't let them get you. They're good at this. And we don't have time to get into it now, but the whole critical race theory and these authoritarian laws about teaching so-called patriotic history, it's the same playbook, it's the same game plan with varying amounts of success from the American Goebbels out there. If they're going to convince their dummy base, well, okay, that's one fight we have. But I'm not going to let them get to you guys. Centrists, lefties, please understand what they're doing. Now, on that score, there's some good things to report. Teachers' unions are getting behind this, and they're really fighting back on the right of history teachers to actually teach history. There's some pretty nice pushback against whitewashing history. And I think we can all take some comfort in what is hopefully still a safe assumption that the truth eventually wins. Now, eventually being the key word there. I don't want this to last for years or decades. We got to fight right now, today, for the right to openly discuss, study, learn, teach the truth. Yeah, the American Fascist Party, out of one side of the mouth, they're talking about freedom of speech. And then out of the other side of their mouth, they're proposing and in some cases actually enacting laws that require patriotic education, that require anthems and pledges and flags and all of this forced patriotism crap. And we can call them on their inconsistencies, on their hypocrisy, but they don't care. Goebbels didn't care if he was called out as a liar or a hypocrite. He knew, and they know, that's not going to touch them. They just get louder and more repetitive. Why do you think it's the same story over and over for days, weeks, months? You know, there was the Mr. Potato Head and there was the Dr. Seuss. How long did that last? Weeks and weeks. We're into, I don't know, month 2 or 3 of this whole, all the lies about critical race theory. We're well into several weeks on the lies regarding crime rates. They're good at this, you guys. They're very good at it. And this is just my little way of saying, please, please, don't let them get you. That's how they get you. All right. So there it is. There's the log for today. Hang in there. Fight the fight. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.